Hello and welcome to my channel. Try This as a series breaking down a certain game or play style of a game. Today we're going to be talking Commander and breaking down Zeriam Golden Wind. I break up my videos into chapters covering a variety of the deck's aspects. Go ahead and navigate to whatever you're specifically looking for. You can find them in the description or in the timeline. If you enjoy this content, then please consider liking the video and subscribing to the channel. It really helps other viewers discover the content I produce and is a great way to show support. With that said, let's dive in. Zeriam is a 3/4 Griffin with flying that costs 3 in white. He has whenever a Griffin you control deals combat damage to a player, create a 2/2 white Griffin creature token with flying. So Zeriam is actually really fun and a huge snowballing value engine. Having the complete value engine on one card and in the command zone is incredibly powerful. I didn't know anything about the tribe going into this, and honestly it doesn't really matter. The only Griffin you need is Zeriam. Griffins as a tribe are actually pretty bad. The only thing they have really going for them is that they generally have flying and are cheap to cast. This lets us quickly build up a small board presence to snowball into future turns with our commander. Flying on this tribe really enables the snowballing effect. We'll almost always have open attacks for the Griffins to trigger Zeriam's ability. In my test games, I almost always ended up with a massive board presence at some point in the game. He quickly grew a reputation in the pod and became a kill-on-sight commander for some of my opponents. In the last game I played, I cast him 5 times. He was constantly removed because of the value he presented in the air. We're going to win the game by exponentially growing our board state and beating down our opponents. Zeriam will eventually get out of control on his own, but there are several utility cards we'll talk about later that help speed up this process. The Griffins aren't very large creatures, so we'll need to add some anthem effects to help them out. Cthulhu's Crusade and Radiant Destiny are some great anthems for this deck. Cthulhu's Crusade is a little slower than usual. Since our primary creature production is in combat, our creatures will get massive, but we won't reap the rewards until the next turn. Radiant Destiny is a budget-friendly anthem that also provides vigilance for our creatures. Though we'd make plenty of blockers with Zeriam's ability, it's always nice to be able to use everything. I'm running a few alternate win conditions for this deck. First up is Halo Fountain. This is a cool new win condition for go-wide decks. It can provide its own creatures and draw us cards as well. We should always have plenty of tapped Griffins that activate these abilities. With Zeriam scaling so much, it should be pretty easy to pull off the alternate win condition. Next up is Strixhaven Stadium. I'm always a fan of this card in go-wide or flying-themed decks. Zeriam fits both of these themes, so it's really the perfect alternate win condition. With most of our creatures having flying, we should always have open attacks to get counters on the stadium. With how much Zeriam scales, we should get plenty of creature tokens to quickly build up those counters. Starting off is the auto-includes in Soul Ring, Arcane Signet, and Thematic Compass. I've always found Thematic Compass to be a reliable card at any point in the game. It can help ensure land drops in early to mid game and then flip into a strictly better Maze of It to protect us from Voltron commanders and other problem creatures. Dousing Dagger flips into a land that taps for 3 mana. In flying decks this should be easy to flip. It's pretty cheap to cast and to equip, so overall it's just a solid ramp equipment. Goldmere and Ornithopter Paradise are 2 mana dorks that are cheap to cast and welcome in mono white. Skyclave Relic and Mindstone are some great mana rocks overall. The Relic scales with the game and gives us some options on how much we want to ramp. Mindstone we can sacrifice for a card if we don't need the extra mana. Sword of the Animist and Sword of Hearthstone are 2 ways to get basics to field. They both provide small buffs and are overall great equipment cards. Land Tax and Smothering Tithe are the 2 heavy hitters for ramp in this deck. Both are mono white staples and the Tithe is welcome in any deck that can run it. There's a lot of ramp in this list, so if you need to cut something for budget reasons, I'd probably start with Land Tax. Next up is some cost reduction in Herald's Horn and the Immortal Sun. The Immortal Sun is another expensive card that's probably worth a budget cut. I always thought it was a cool card and I love the sweet animation it had on Arena. It gives us a blanket cost reduction, anthem for our creatures, and card draw, which is all welcome in this list. I'm not running any planeswalkers, so it's a one-sided debuff that might come in handy. Both of these cards double as card advantage for us also. Deep Gnome Terramancer is a new card to help white decks keep up with their opponents. How useful it is really depends on the type of decks you're up against, but it's likely to be useful in most games. To wrap it up is Wayfarer's Bauble, Solemn Simulacrum, and Burnished Heart is all great ways to get basics to field. When you don't have access to green, these are solid backup ramp cards. First up are Espo Sentinel and Archivist of Ogma. These cards aren't really budget friendly but are very useful in Commander. With all the searching in EDH between fetch lands, tutors, and ramp spells, Ogma should get plenty of value. Next up is Folk Hero and Court of Grace. Folk Hero is just a solid tribal effect. Even though we only draw once per turn, I don't think you'd want to cast more than 1 Griffin anyway. It would be a good idea to hold some back in hand to rebuild, as Zeriam can often carry us most of the way. Court of Grace is my favorite card for the court cycle. Monarch is always a fun mechanic to play with, and this enchantment giving us more flyers pairs with our beatdown strategy. To wrap it up is Gyro Reach Sanitarium, Mikokoro, and War Room. These lands all have various ways to draw us cards. This way we can sink our extra mana for card draw. I've already discussed some other card draw effects in other sections of the video, so this section is going to be a little bit shorter. Between all of these effects, I have plenty of card draw in my test games. Honestly, I never felt like I needed to draw a ton of cards to begin with Zeriam carrying most of my games. Annoyed Procession will double up the tokens produced by our commander. It really makes explosive board states and speeds up the game. 16 of the 26 creatures in this deck are Griffins, and honestly most are not worth mentioning. They're only here to provide extra triggers for Zeriam. For example is Abbey, Armored, and Diving Griffins. They're just flying bears with vigilance, nothing really that special. Like them is Wild, Sunspire, and Silverbeak Griffins. They're just flying bears without vigilance. There are a few noteworthy ones like Zuberi, Matenda, and Daraja who all have a bit of utility. Zuberi provides a small anthem for our tribe. Matenda gives us a pretty bad recursion effect, but all the same is a recursion effect. And Daraja has a restrictive removal effect, but black is a pretty popular color, so I think you'd find some opportunities to use it. Some great utility creatures is Blade Griff Prototype, Magus of the Moat, and Sephara. Blade Griff is one of the better Griffins, being able to remove non-land permanents. Though we don't choose it, it's a great politicking card. Magus helps ensures we don't get attacked by most creatures and really shuts down some decks. Sephara protects our board state and is easy to cheat out with her ability. Spear of Heliod, True Conviction, and Soul Warden are some other solid utility cards. The Spear gives us a small anthem and retribution against whoever attacks us. True Conviction can double up our damage and creature production through Double Strike. The lifelink is also a nice bonus. Soul Warden should generate us a ton of life between our own tokens and whatever our opponents have. It won't take long for our opponents to realize Zeriam is the core of our deck, so to protect him I'm running Darksteel Plate, Swiftfoot Boots, and Lightning Greaves. These equipment cards are some staples that are really useful against most removal cards and effects you'll run into in Commander. For the same reason, I'm also running Teferi's Protection, Flawless Maneuver, and Rebuff the Wicked. Teferi's Protection is just the king of protect myself and my stuff cards. People don't often associate mono white with counterspells, so Rebuff the Wicked can really take opponents off guard. The cutting room floor is where I talk about some cards around over $10 at the time of recording that I cut from my list for various reasons but are worth mentioning to run. Though these cards didn't find a home in my list, they might find a home in yours. First up is a Chroma's Well. This card gives all of your creatures just a ton of useful keywords that normally close out most games. The Griffins we have aren't exactly huge creatures, so we don't have a ton of power to really take advantage of this card. Next up is Door of the Destinies. There's only 18 Griffins in this deck, including our commander and Quib Swap, so I don't really think this card is worth including. This is a very powerful tribal card, but the list doesn't really jam out Griffins through casting like most decks that run this. You could probably make a good argument that any Anthem is worth running to help out the beatdown strategy. Even if you cast just 2 or 3 Griffin spells, this card would probably be worth it. I'm not sure, so if you end up running it in your own list, let me know just how useful it was and how many Griffins you have. Some more Anthem effects is Vanquisher's Banner and Coat of Arms. I've always thought Coat of Arms creates more problems than it solves. It's a pain to figure out what everyone's new anthems are, and sometimes it ends up enabling your opponents more than yourself. I think in the case of this deck, Zeriam would outscale most other tribal lists. Even if it doesn't, we'll still make blockers in combat that are Anthem to protect us. The Banner is a nice draw effect for the tribe in addition to the Anthem. I think of the two I'd probably run the Banner, but both are solid cards in this list. Pearl Medallion and Archaeomancer's Map are 2 great mana related cards for mono white. The Medallion gives another blanket cost reduction, while the map is normally a reliable ramp card. Last up is Helm of the Host. This is a pretty cool equipment card that can stack up the token production from Zeriam. I didn't realize until writing the script that I forgot about this card. It's a solid effect that sticks around if the original Zeriam is ever removed. It is a lot of mana to pull off though, which isn't something mono white is really known for. I had a few games where Zeriam was cast 3 or 4 times and I barely had mana to do anything else. It would probably be worth trying out, so let me know how crazy your games got if you managed to utilize this card. First up is Honor the Pure and Inspiring Leader as 2 more Anthem effects for our Griffins. We're going to be making a lot of tokens, so Inspiring Leader should get plenty of value. Next up is Griffin Airy and Mirror Entity. The enchantment can generate a few more Griffins for us, but there isn't a ton of lifelink in the deck to guarantee the token production. With a little tweaking though, it could be really reliable. Mirror Entity can adjust the base power of all of our creatures for extra damage. It can also enable the rest of our creatures in the list by turning them into Griffins. Heraldic Banner and Cage Sun are 2 more mana related cards that can double up as an anthem for our creatures. I thought I had enough of these effects, but both are generally worth running. Legion Loyalty is a cool new card that gives everything Myriad. Even though the tokens don't stick around, it enables our beatdown strategy and generates a massive amount of tokens with Zeriam's ability. I didn't cover every card in this deck or every suggestion I have for Zeriam, so if you'd like to see the rest, check out the link in the description below. If you enjoyed this video, please consider clicking the like button and subscribing to the channel. Comment below on cards you think synergize well with this commander, and if you have any suggestions for commanders to build in the future. Thank you so much for watching, good luck, and have fun.